day 1061 of this Trump administration. And within these next 48 hours, President Trump will likely become only the third sitting president in U.S. history to be impeached. The House Rules Committee meets tomorrow. Then on Wednesday, the full House expected to vote on 2 articles of impeachment: abuse of power, obstruction of Congress. Over this past weekend, the head Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer sent a letter to Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the head Senate Republican, requesting that 4 witnesses be allowed to testify in a possible Senate trial. They include White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and former National Security Advisor John Bolton.
To engage a trial without the facts coming out is to engage in a cover-up. To conduct a trial without the facts is saying we're afraid. We have something to hide. To conduct a trial without relevant witnesses who haven't been heard from, to just rehash the evidence presented in the House, just doesn't make any sense.
Our cameras then caught up with Republican Senator Mitt Romney of Utah. We asked him about Schumer's written request.
Do you think Schumer's letter was sent primarily to target moderate Republicans like yourself?
You'd have to ask him that. I don't know. Why he sent out his letters he did, but I would assume it was sent out in good faith, and he's looking at a process he hopes the Senate would carry out, and I'll give that good consideration.
One senator who is not considering Schumer's proposal is John Cornyn, Republican of Texas. Wall Street Journal reports Cornyn said live testimony could turn the trial into a 3-ring circus. Quote, "No lawyer wants to put a witness on when they haven't had a chance to question them under oath and can cross-examine them if they deviate from that," said Mr. Cornyn. "Witnesses say the darndest things." Here's what Mitch McConnell had to say about witnesses in the Clinton impeachment trial back in '98.
Every other impeachment has had witnesses. It's not unusual to have witnesses in a trial. And I think we're handling this in exactly the appropriate way under the Constitution, and it will end soon.
Washington Post reports on what's being described as a private campaign among freshman Democrats, private no longer, you'll note, to draft independent member of Congress Justin Amash to serve as an impeachment manager in a Senate trial. The Michigan congressman left the Republican Party earlier this year. He is a vocal critic of President Trump. Post reports Democrats believe Amash would reach conservative voters in a way that Democrats themselves can't. He is among the founding members of the Freedom Caucus in the House. We are also learning more tonight about where moderate Democrats stand on impeachment. Freshman Michigan Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, represents a district Trump won. Today, she said she will vote yes on impeachment. At a town hall this morning, she was met with cheers from some, not so much cheers from others, as she tried to explain the underpinnings of her decision. We'll have more on her announcement a bit later on. Several other first-term Democrats who flipped their districts a year ago came out in support of impeachment today. They include Andy Kim of New Jersey, Abigail Spanberger of Virginia, Chrissy Houlihan of Pennsylvania.
And it got to the end of the line where there was no other choice other than to impeach this president. On these 2 articles, particularly, the evidence is overwhelming, and it is my constitutional responsibility to make that difficult vote.
Then there is Democratic Congressman Jeff Van Drew of the southern tip of New Jersey. Sources told NBC News over the weekend he is expected to leave his party and become a Republican. Van Drew has been consistently opposed to impeaching this president. NBC News reporting at least 6 of his staff members resigned in protest. They, after all, wanted to go work for a Democrat and wanted to pursue Democratic causes, while Van Drew is presumably looking to hang on to his seat in Congress. Meanwhile, the House Judiciary Committee forwarded its full report on the impeachment of President Trump to the Rules Committee shortly after midnight this morning. The committee's 658-page document goes beyond the broad allegations outlined in the 2 articles of impeachment. It explains, quote, President Trump's abuse of power encompassed both the constitutional offense of bribery and multiple federal crimes. He has betrayed the national interest, people of this nation, and should not be permitted to be above the law. It is therefore all the more vital that he be removed from office. Yet the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee seems to have already made up his mind on impeachment. Here is Lindsey Graham over the weekend.
I am trying to give a pretty clear signal. I have made up my mind. I'm not trying to pretend to be a fair juror here.
You are, along with the rest of your Senate fellows, jurors. Is it appropriate to be voicing your opinion even before this gets to the Senate as a trial?
Well, I must think so, because I'm doing it.
As we reported here last week, senators must now take a specific and new oath before any formal trial starts for the president. It reads in part, "I will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and laws, so help them God." Last week, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said he was coordinating closely with the White House counsel on a possible Senate trial. On Sunday, Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas was asked whether the comments from McConnell and Graham might be a violation of this new Senate oath.
I fully intend to follow by oath, but the oath of a Senate juror, it has some similarities to a criminal trial, but it has some differences as well. The framers understood that impeachment, particularly the impeachment of a president, is inherently a political exercise. Senators are not required, like jurors in a criminal trial, to be sequestered, not to talk to anyone, not to coordinate. There's no prohibition.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.